Welcome back to the Sunday Footy Show. It is now time for Inside the 10. We've got Peter Waddell here from the Courier Mail. Of course, we've got Andrew Johns, who's he pens a column for the Sydney Morning Herald every single week.
It's my first time back in this moment since Origin 3.
Yeah, this is the
Don't
spot.
get nervous, Joey.
Hey, you don't have the crowd heckling you, so this is probably safer.
Yeah.
And Brent Reid as well from the Daily Telegraph. Let's get stuck into some of the hot topics. First of all, being Magic Round. Do we think Magic Round will always be played in Brisbane?
Well, Danica, it's been a wonderful success story, hasn't it, here at Suncorp? It is the home of Queensland Rugby League. It's been fantastic. 140,000 people will come through the stands in the next 3 days. But I think they should consider moving it around the traps. I mean, I know Peter V'landys, the RLC boss, is talking about a Super Bowl-style concept with the grand final. I think if the NRL can monetise it in other markets, why not? It's off contract with the Queensland government next year. They put in $7 million at the moment. But if venues like Melbourne or Adelaide or Perth or even Vegas want to offer 15 mil, why not? Why not take it to Vegas?
Well, it's hard to argue with that. but, I mean, my view is you keep it here. As long as people keep supporting it, as long as the government's willing to put money in, if you're not going to give Queensland the grand final, I know there's talk about that happening, but I don't think that will happen again. The grand final will stay in Sydney. I think you've got to keep Magic around here. I mean, this week's been amazing. What did you say, Peter? 140,000 people coming to the games. As long as Queensland people support the concept like that, why would you move it? Why would you take it somewhere else? Because people here, this is the heartland of rugby league. They need content. Joey, you'd love that. The heartland up here.
Look, I totally agree.
True.
I think it should stay here.
Yeah.
The people of Queensland come and support it. People fly in, by all accounts.
Yeah.
They enjoy themselves. And, I think it should stay.
How much do you think it generates for the economy up here in Brisbane?
Well, they say it's upwards of 20 million, and it's a huge economic boost for the state. And that's what would appeal to other markets. I'm sure Melbourne will be looking at this, the Victorian government, and other governments will be looking at this and saying this can be a real jewel in the crown for us. So I'm sure they'll bid for it.
And
Well, hypothetically, if it went somewhere else, where would you like to see it go?
We put it on the spot there, Joey.
I think Auckland would be great.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Auckland would be good.
Build the game over there more interest.
You've got to go to places like that. If you're going to take it on the road, I think you've got to go to places where you're seriously thinking about expanding the game. And they've talked about putting another team in New Zealand, Perth,
So if we take
even
Magic
Adelaide,
Round
maybe.
to Perth, do you think that's going to generate more people playing rugby league over there?
I think it'll get more interest in the game, don't you think? You don't
No.
think so?
No. AFL's too big over there.
Well, I'm not saying a lot of people. I'm not saying it's going to overtake
No,
AFL, but I think it would get more interest.
if you go to Auckland, there's bigger opportunity to build the game
It'll
over
be
there.
good for Melbourne too, actually.
Well,
If you do take it to somewhere like WA, when you don't have that fan base established like we do here in Brisbane, you'd miss out on having sellout crowds. That's a risk.
Well, potentially you would, yeah. But
That's what
I'm not in
makes
favour of that,
Magic
though. I
Round,
think
yeah.
it should stay here. But that is the risk you take, that you won't sell the sort of tickets they've sold here and you won't generate the same sort of money. But you'd only do that if the government's willing to put a bucket load of cash in to back the concept. And the West Australian government's done that in the past with Origin. I think there's an Origin coming up there, isn't there, Pete? Adelaide's the same. They're throwing money in for Origin. So I'm sure if you put it up for grabs, those governments would put money in to try and get the concept there.
Freddie made a good point. The weather. Weather's a huge contributor to this. Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Sun
Some
always
news this
shines in
week.
Queensland.
I heard
You know that.
that.
Big story this week, the Tigers securing recruitment manager Scott Fulton from the Manly Seagulls. Interesting situation, leaving Tim Sheens out of these discussions. Was that the
I
right
don't
call?
like it, Danica. I love the concept of getting Scott because he's got a really great record and he's got a great record at mining Western Sydney. I mean, he's found some really good players out of Western Sydney. So I like the idea of getting Scott involved. But when you take the coach out of the equation and it's the board who make the decision, I just sets a bad precedent. And to me, it shows a little bit of a lack of trust within the organisation. And footy clubs can't work like that. And what happens if Tim and Scott don't get on? What happens if Benji and Scott don't get on? What happens if they butt heads on everything?
So
How
why
can that
did
work?
they want to leave him out of the discussion?
Well, I just think they thought, well, obviously, Tim's close to Warren McDonald, who's the current head of recruitment. And I think they were worried about how Tim might react to it if they told him. And they wanted to bring Scott in. So once they decided to go down that path, the plan was to tell Tim at some point, but it leaked as we often see, it leaked in social media before Tim. They had the opportunity to tell Tim, they had to rush it. So I just think if you don't take the coach on the journey, there's a risk it could backfire on you.
Does it show a disconnect?
Oh, absolutely. To me, I just think it shows what a shambolic organisation the Tigers are. I mean, for a long time, I feel like the left hand's not talking to the right hand at the Tigers, and until they get some transparency across the board, until they get some good governance, which I question at the moment, given the decision of certain factions at the club, then the Tigers will remain where they are, and that's at the bottom of the table at the moment. And I agree with Rudy. I mean, I think Scott Fulton obviously has some credibility. He's got some gravitas. He has knowledge of the market in Sydney. But to not have Tim Sheens, a legend of that club, delivered their first and only premiership in 2005, to not have him across this, it's a disgrace.
Joey, what do you make of this?
I think it's a great signing. He's got a great relationship, Scott Fulton, with West of Sydney. Look what he's brought over to Manly. Schuster, Olakuatu, Paseka, the Fainu brothers. So he's got a great relationship there. And we've all said West Tigers have got to look after their own nursery. So this is a step in the right direction. But for me, I'm a bit old school. At a club, there's one boss. There's one dictator. It's a head coach. He's got to be across everything.
All right, well, moving on to the Dragons. Is it too little, too late for Hawke in his decision to dump Zach Lomax and moving Hunt to hooker?
I think it is, Danica. I don't know why they're taking so long to make a decision on Anthony Griffin's future. I think it's a little unfair on Anthony, but it's funny, he's talking about planning for the future by playing Ben Hunt at hooker and giving these young halves the chance to play together, but it's not his. It won't be his future. It'll be someone else's future. So, look, it's selfless of him to do that. But for me, we're in a ridiculous situation at the moment. The footy club, if they lose today, it can't go on. They've got to tell Anthony what they're doing, make a call on his future. I think we all know how that's going to end. And, everything else is window dressing.
But, Rudy, I've got to say, this positional issue with Ben Hunt, it's only a microcosm of the bigger problem at the Dragons. I mean, their board is an embarrassment, seriously. I mean, their lack of leadership, they're meant to provide governance. And what are they doing by treating Anthony Griffin the way he's been treated? It's been embarrassing for the club. They should hang their heads in shame as a board. What direction are they taking that club? Now, I'll tell you what direction they should take it. Anthony Griffin, keep him for another 12 months. Wayne Bennett's off contract next year at the Dolphins. He's coached the club at the Dragons. He's won a premiership there. I would get Wayne Bennett for 2025, and you tell Hook we've got stability for the next 18 months, then we chase Wayne Bennett and rebuild this club.
So have you got Hook there for another year, or are you wasting time? Are you treading water?
Well, I think, Joey, at least you give some continuity to Hook to at least get some stability in the joint, get some continuity of players, get the roster in some sort of shape within the salary cap, and then Wayne Bennett comes in 2025 and can provide the clout and the premiership winning aura that he's got.
If you can get Wayne, it's probably worth the risk, though, Joe, isn't it, to go a year, don't you think?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think moving Ben Hunt to hooker, I think Ben Hunt at rep level is a hooker. He's not a halfback. At club level, he's a halfback. Out and out halfback.
What about the decision to drop Zach Lomax?
Well, he hasn't been in good form. I think he's playing on the wrong side of the field, for one. He's a right foot stepper. He's playing on the other side of the field. But they've got the two really good strike centres, Moses Suli and Zach Lomax. They never get the ball. Never get the ball. Like a lot of centres these days. The only time they get the ball, the defence is that close to them. Give them the ball early. Let them do what they do best.
All right, well, let's have a look at two teams who are absolutely on fire, the Broncos and South Sydney. Who are we calling a premiership favourites?
Well, he's a Broncos man, Rudy, so we know what he's going to say. Come on, Rudy, take the ball
You're
up
the
for
Queenslander. I actually tipped South to win the comp before the season started, so...
You're worried about last year, Brisbane fell off the cliff late.
A little bit, Joey, but I think they're a different team. I think they're a better team this year. I think they've obviously got that experience. Kevy's got that experience under his belt. And look, they've just got so many points in them. They're so explosive, aren't they? So many points of attack. But watching South last night, when Latrell's on and Cody are on, I don't think anyone can beat them.
They beat the Storm last night, and they played with it. They're playing with it. For me, South's are number one by a long way at the moment.
I've got to say, Joey, and we saw that with their defeat of the Broncos 2 weeks ago. They won 32-6. Yeah. They were too classy. But Brisbane didn't have Ezra Mam that night and Payne Haas, their best forward. I think Brisbane have surprised me. Like, I thought they'd be 6th or 7th this year. But I think with the maturity of their squad over the last 12 months, I think they've got the strike power to win it. Adam Reynolds, if he stays fit, they've got the game manager to do it. And I liked the other night against Manly when they led 20-0. They weren't chasing points in the second half. They were prepared to let the flow of the game come to them. They dictated terms and then put Manly away at the back end of the second half. So I think they'll hold their nerve, Joey, in the finals.
It's how they manage after Origin. So look at Carrigan, Haas, Cobbo, Reece Walsh maybe.
Catewell.
Ezra Mann, Catewell. They're going to lose half a dozen 8 players to Origin. Yeah. It's how Kevy handles that, manages that, because it can burn you out.
Well, you're around the Broncos a lot. Is it feeling like quite a strong front office, quite a strong club? Because there was some speculation there. Kevin Walters, Ben Ikin, their relationship.
Well, Danica, I know that when Kevy came to the club, the one word he talked about was unity. And I do see that at the club. He's brought solidarity, he's brought a happiness to the group. And look, Kevy might say, is he the best coach in the game? Maybe not. But one thing he can do, he's brought happiness to the club, and he was the guy that got Adam Reynolds. He's the one that said, we need a number 7. I'll get that guy. I'll move other guys on to do that under the cap. And he's done it. He deserves credit. And I think they've got the mateship as a team to go a long way in this comp. I think they're prelim final certainties, and then after that, they're 2 games away from a premiership.
All right, it's great to see the Broncos in fine form at the moment. And lastly, the Roosters. Where are we assessing them? Are they contenders for the premiership?
Yeah, for me,
Strong contenders?
If I had to pick them at the moment, I'd have South out in front, and I've got the Roosters number 2. Trent Robinson showed in the past, he times his run to perfection. I think they were a little bit underdone at the start of the year. They're not fully fit. They've still got players missing. So towards the end of the year, if they're fully fit, I'd love to see South Roosters grand final. Could you imagine that, how big it would be?
Surely we'd have to get that moved to Allianz Stadium.
Lock out 30,000. That'll go down well.
Yeah.
Reedy?
I think they're in the mix as long as they stay healthy. I'm interested to see how the Sam Walker thing plays out though, and whether he's back. Do they need him in the team to win the comp? Look, are they a better side with or without Sam Walker?
They're a different team. They're less unorthodox.
Yeah.
That's what I like about Sam. Look, I love Sam because he plays off the cuff. He plays like a halfback in the 90s. Backs himself.
Yeah.
But at the moment, that combination of Kiri and Manu is building all the time.
Yeah.
It's hard to put... I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen there.
Actually, it's interesting, Joey. You're a better judge than all of us on great halfbacks, obviously. But I think they've got the chemistry wrong with the Roosters at the moment. And that's why I don't think they're a concern for me right now. I want to see more from them, but I don't think Walker at 7 was the right decision. I'd put Sam Walker to a 6. I think he's a free-flowing type of player. And I think Kiri he's the senior player. He's 30 years old plus. He needs to take charge of the team and say, I'm the 7. Give Sam the free rein. Put Manu in the centres, and I think they're a more formidable team.
I just worry about, with Sam and Kiri together, there's 2 real targets in the defensive line. If you've got small players either side of the field, it puts pressure not only on those players, on the players either side, the defenders either side. So I think Joseph Manu stays at 6 for the rest of his career.
Yeah, really.
Did I read Sam Walker came up here to Brisbane with the Roosters
Pete
squad?
wrote the story, yeah. Sammy, they flew him up.
Yeah,
They flew him up on Saturday, didn't they?
That's right. He was in camp with the Roosters.
Yeah.
So.
And what was the reason behind that? Was that to keep him in and amongst the team?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was part of the extended squad, so and if there was an injury to someone or someone got COVID, he could have stepped in. But actually, interesting, Joey, when you talk about Manu at 6, where do you think that leaves Sam Walker? Like, if Kiri's playing well, as he has been, and they're
He's
2-0,
going to have to bide his time. Look, I see Sam as a 15-year NRL halfback. He'll play for Queensland. He'll play for Australia eventually. He might have to bide his time for a while. The interesting one of the Roosters, what they do at the centres. Now, do they play Drew Hutchison this week? I think Billy Smith, who's had some long-term injury, he's been back for 2 games. I think they have to play Billy Smith today in the centre.
So that's my worry, is whether the Walker thing becomes a distraction as the season goes on, and speculation over what he's going to do. His future becomes a bit of a distraction for the footy club. That's my only concern with the Roosters. I think, look, they've got the talent to win a comp, there's no doubt about that. But just wonder how the Walker thing will play out externally. And also, I mean, Robbo's a smart guy, right? You back him to control that situation, but I just think it's got the potential to become a real distraction for
I think
him.
Sam would look really good in red and blue. Really good.
Can you make an approach to him, Joey?
No.
All right, well, speaking of the Roosters, we're going to be discussing everything Sunday footy coming up straight after the break, because we'll be bringing you the Roosters and the Cowboys live from 3 p.m. We'll be right back straight after this.